Hi, I'm Dr. Boz, and this is the third in 3 videos reviewing the science behind how to take a body that's fueled on sugar and transition it to a body that's fueled on fat. Let's get started with the third section. If you've tuned into the previous videos, you'll know that there's 5 phases of this transition. The first one cleans up the sugar out of your blood. The second one cleans up the excessive sugar in your liver. Phase 3 really takes a deeper dive into the level of ketosis and the types of cells that are turning themselves on to producing ketones. Entering into phase 4 and 5 are unique from the other 3 because it's the first section where the brain gets a little bit of fuel from ketones. Let's start with phase 4. Most of my patients don't begin a ketogenic diet with a strict fast, and I wouldn't recommend it. The rest of us use a ketogenic diet with high fat to transition into phase 4. But that's why it takes most people not in a strict fast up to 4 days to get to this phase 4, where their brain is adapting to using those ketones as fuel. In a strict fast, you entered phase 4 at 2 days. That means 2 days of no calories, and you started to produce ketones and transition your body and brain into using fat as a fuel. In phase 4, your muscle cells and your fat cells now are 100% dependent on ketones. They have fully adapted. You still have the resistant parts of your system, like your red blood cells, this really inner part of your kidney, and your brain that are mostly glucose dependent. Very little cells in those sections are using ketones yet. In phase 3, if you did have any blood ketones you were monitoring, you can see a pretty high peak of ketone production as your cells start to turn on and make ketones faster than the rest of your body knows how to use them. By phase 4, we get a better match by the cells in your liver producing the ketones and the rest of your system knowing how to burn them as fuel. In fact, this might be a great time to remind you, why are those ketones in your urine in the first place? Didn't we work really hard to figure out how to make them? And wasn't that supposed to be a fuel source for my body? So why am I wasting it in my urine? This is actually a very important part about why ketosis is a safe process for most people to use. Even type 1 diabetics, I would contend, have a safe option of using ketosis as a way to fuel their system. I would just recommend those type 1 diabetics use the help of a physician. The rest of you have a built-in overflow valve for ketones. You see, you may remember a few videos back where I talked about ketoacidosis, this really high acidic state matched with way too many sugars that can spark the body into a shift in the acid-base ratio and can be deadly. The way your body protects against that not happening happens in the overflow valve for your kidney and one found in your lungs. When the ketones get too high, the body allows the ketones to spill over into your urine, and this keeps that acid-base ratio safe and healthy. Your heart beats normally, there's no funny stuff that goes on with your brain, it doesn't send you into a coma like can happen when the acid-base ratio gets off. If there's one thing to lower the frustration about why those ketones are in your urine and not being used as a fuel, I remind patients that these used to be fat calories. So you are literally peeing out fat calories in the form of ketones. Now that's a weight loss plan most of my patients will sign up for. Finally, let's move on to phase 5. Phase 5, I believe you can spend the rest of your life in phase 5. Keto adaptation. This is your body has every single organ that is ready to use a ketone if you need to. Remember, you can't train your body to use ketones in the presence of excessive glucose. Your body will always choose glucose first, and there's those stubborn organs in your body that are very protective from where their fuel source comes from. Specifically, I'm speaking about your brain. Your brain is very protective from where it gets its fuel. In fact, there is a mantra that the brain can only use glucose as its form of fuel. This isn't true. It can't live only on ketones, but it can be adapted to use ketones for fuel. I like to describe phase 5 as the well-oiled machine that your body was designed to be. And this keto adaptation is a system that repairs quickly, a brain that sleeps deeply, and has focus that lasts beyond what I ever expected was capable as I aged. I contend that the brain fuel that your body gets from being keto adapted lowers the symptoms of depression, decreases the mental problems found with aging and a history of inflammation in the brain. And when you get right down to it, there are so many medical problems that cause this slight microscopic inflammation of the brain. In fact, many of my patients don't believe it's possible for their brains to work so well until they hit this final phase of ketosis. So how do you get to phase 5? Well, there's a fast way and a slower way. The fast way is to go on a strict fast for 40 days. Yeah, most people won't sign up for that. They're not ready to give up food for 40 days. And I wouldn't recommend it. Most of my patients do have a chronic inflammation or a chronic illness that will become exploited as they shift the chemistry within their systems. Taking that chemistry shift and doing it in a much more reasonable pattern and pace allows for success. And this isn't a race to the first ketone. My goal for patients and for myself is a healthy life, a healthy, sustainable lifestyle. And I contend a ketogenic diet is the best way to get them there. Changing habits is hard, and by adapting a ketogenic diet as opposed to a strict fast for 40 days, my patients are amazed and often overwhelmed by how many places our society uses carbohydrates. We celebrate with them. We bring them to funerals. You've had a stressful day, we use them. They're found in nearly every processed food that we consume and in a lot of foods that were considered healthy for my whole life. I'm going to end this post by showing you what my ketones and sugars are. As I record this, I am on about the 40th hour of fasting, and I've done that on purpose. Because I was recording this blog post, so that puts my sugar at 97. I also fasted because I wanted to have the best concentration for this recording. Doing a glucose and then a ketone monitor. Checking my ketones is also something that I've learned helps keep me accountable, as well as proves to me which phase I'm in. When I fast for up to 48, and this is a 72-hour fast that I'm reaching for, I can find that I push my ketone production up higher, and for the subsequent week or two, my morning fasting sugars are better. As I shared with you before, I was insulin resistant as well. I had carried that extra weight for a couple of years, and my system got really good at producing insulin and storing sugar. If I find that my morning fasting sugars have crept back up closer to 95 or even 100, I will do an extended fast. In my case, 48 to 72 hours seems to be enough to reset those blood sugars back to that 55 to 85 range in the morning. The more bad habits that sneak back into life return me to higher blood sugars. It's by cleansing through a 3-day fast that I recognize how often I was snacking, and I get the reward of seeing how much better I feel when my sugars go lower and my ketones go higher. But that's an example of phase 5. If I was just starting out on a ketogenic diet, I wouldn't have the privilege of fasting with ease, meaning I really don't get hungry. A few waves of hunger are quickly squelched with either salt tablets on my tongue or even a small amount of salty bone broth. These fasting segments allow me the increased ketones and lower glucose that give me a boost of brain function. It reminds me why I'm on a ketogenic diet. Within 3 days, I can boost that brain energy back up to what it is when I first went to a ketogenic diet. Sometimes you forget how much better you feel when you've been in the status quo. And then a few bad habits sneak back into the pattern. Before you know it, my fasting sugars are back up in the 90s. and I'd like to keep them. I feel best when they're in the 70s to 80s. I hope you've enjoyed this. This wraps up the 5 phases of what happens during a keto adaptation. If you'd like to learn more about this ketogenic diet, you can check out the book I wrote Any Way You Can, or subscribe. We'll have more videos coming your way.